Okay, picture this. You're sitting in a high-stakes project negotiation. You've just pitched an idea that you spent, the last 2 weeks meticulously working on. The room is leaning in, your manager looks genuinely interested, things are going great. And then, before anyone can actually agree with you, a coworker across the table leans back, smiles a little, and drops one single, perfectly polite-sounding sentence. Suddenly, your stomach just drops, the whole vibe in the room shifts, and you are inexplicably backed into a corner. What just happened? Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're decoding corporate ambush phrases. I'm really thrilled you're here, because honestly, once you see these tactics for what they are, you will literally never be blindsided again.
Here is our playbook for today. 1. The corporate ambush. 2. Stalling momentum. 3. Blame shifting. 4. Controlling narratives. And 5. Specificity and the record. We're going to use this structure to systematically neutralize 18 specific workplace manipulation phrases, figure out their hidden intents, and give you concrete countermeasures.
All right, part 1. The corporate ambush, the weapon of vocabulary. The modern corporate battlefield is rarely aggressive in public. Nobody's flipping tables or shouting. The most dangerous operators at work, they don't yell or insult you. If they did, you'd see it coming. Instead, they use rehearsed, collaborative-sounding language to quietly position you for failure.
Workplace surveys reveal a pretty staggering reality. 58% of employees who experience psychological manipulation at work never actually report it. Why? Well, because there's no visible weapon. Because absolutely nothing that happened looked wrong on the surface. That is the exact design of these polite-sounding phrases. We absolutely have to decode them to protect your leadership authority. Because if you don't, these little moments end up on your permanent record, not theirs. Moving right along to part 2. Intent 1. Stalling momentum. Let's look at phrases engineered to totally kill your winning ideas by dragging them into vague resistance, or, as I like to call it, corporate purgatory. So, you're in a meeting with leadership. Your argument is gaining real traction with the decision makers, and right then you hear, "That's a great point, let's take this offline." It feels reasonable, right? It feels super professional. But here's what actually just happened. Your idea was alive in a room full of decision makers, and it was just elegantly moved into an offline limbo that, let's be real, almost never actually happens. The longer it stays offline, the more your point loses its momentum.
So your response here is absolutely crucial. You basically have 2 defensive moves. First, try to lock in a specific time right then and there. Just say, "Sure, when works for you? Let's put it on the calendar right now." Public commitment is really hard to ghost on. Second, if you can't do that, document your position in a meeting recap email. Just state the point you raised and note that the conversation was deferred. Establishing a solid paper trail of the deferred conversation protects your position in the official record.
There's a whole family of these stalling phrases. If someone says, "I just want to make sure everyone feels heard," they are basically turning decision-making into therapy. Hearing, "maybe now isn't the right time." Yeah, that parks your idea indefinitely. "We should socialize this," traps you in an endless loop of alignment meetings. And let's be pragmatic. That kills ambitious ideas by reframing your innovation as unrealistic. Notice how vague resistance just thrives on delays? Your countermeasure for all of these is the evidence-based question. You have to force them to commit to measurable conditions. Ask things like, what decision are we making today? What exactly must change for it to be right? Who specifically needs alignment? Or what specifically makes this impractical?
Let's dive into part 3. Intent 2. Blame shifting. These are the ambush phrases used to avoid accountability, manufacture incompetence on your part, or transfer the heat of a mistake.
This one is a classic. You pitch an idea and someone chimes in with, "just to play devil's advocate," and then proceeds to completely pick your idea apart. It sounds like they're just, stress testing your thinking. But they are not playing devil's advocate. They are disagreeing with you and using that phrase as a shield. It lets them plant seeds of doubt just as your idea gains traction, while taking absolutely zero accountability for the disagreement. If leadership has questions next week, the memory is that you were defensive and they were just exploring. When you hear this, do not defend yourself. Seriously, defending yourself puts you right in the corner they're trying to trap you in. Instead, you've got to flip the burden of proof. Just calmly ask, what specifically concerns you about it? Force them to commit to a real concrete position, which is the exact thing they were using the phrase to avoid in the first place. Okay, a deadline got missed, a project is off track, and in the post-mortem meeting, a coworker leans forward and says, not to throw anyone under the bus, but, and then they promptly throw you right under the bus. This is just extreme cynicism.
It is a literal permission slip to assign blame to you while they hide behind the appearance of reluctance. They pre-armored themselves, weaponizing the social discomfort of you accusing them of doing exactly what they just did.
This brilliantly illustrates a much wider trend of blame-shifting phrases. Notice how "I may be wrong, but" launches criticism with zero accountability, or "I don't want to get into the weeds" is deployed purely to avoid uncomfortable data that weakens their argument. Sometimes you'll get hit with "I'm surprised this wasn't raised earlier," which is a really subtle blame transfer to make you look negligent. And then there's "we need to think strategically," often just a fog machine to dismiss operational realities. Bridging back to those operational realities, the hard data and factual timelines completely neutralizes people who want to retreat into this just asking questions mode.
All right, part 4. Intent 3. Controlling narratives. Now we are transitioning to the most insidious tactics on the corporate battlefield. These are moves designed to warp reality itself: gaslighting, reputation laundering, and invisible consensus. Imagine being in a meeting. You raise a perfectly valid question about an unresolved topic, and a coworker tilts their head, looks mildly confused, and says, "Wait, didn't we already decide on this last week?" The whole room turns to look at you. The conversation they are referencing either didn't happen or nothing was actually decided, but honestly, it doesn't even matter. You've just been blindsided by a manufactured history that makes you look entirely unprepared or totally out of the loop with senior stakeholders.
This is polished, professional performance gaslighting. Over time, your reputation shifts to being the person who slows the team down. Your defense here is absolutely critical. Never apologize. Saying, "Oh, sorry, I must have missed that," acts as a confession. Instead, stay completely calm and ask them to produce the meeting notes. "Can you remind me what we decided? Where can I find that in the notes?" This forces them to dig for evidence that simply doesn't exist. Now let's talk about the most dangerous phrase of all, usually found lurking right in your inbox. You're in a back-and-forth email thread, and suddenly the next reply lands. There is a new, very senior executive's name on the CC line. The text cheerfully reads, "Just looping in Sarah for visibility." Boom! The temperature of the conversation just changed. This has an immediate chilling effect. Let's be clear, they are not informing leadership about a status update. They are starting a paper trail. This is cover your assets, escalation disguised as visibility. This tactic doesn't just hurt your current argument, it restructures every future moment of the conversation into a permanent record against you. Every pushback you give now has an audience. The walls are suddenly made of glass, and you aren't the one who put them there. So, how do we treat the CC field as a chessboard? Step 1. Do not react emotionally or defensively. The CC was a trap, and reacting just confirms it. Step 2. Take control and recap the narrative calmly. Reply with something like, "Thanks for looping in to bring everyone up to speed, here's where we are," and then tell the story in your own words. Step 3. This is the move most people are afraid to make. Loop in a senior ally of your own, your manager, a relevant peer. They move to peace, you move one back, ensuring you control the narrative before they do. Here are your final narrative traps. If they say, "Just to clarify," to distort your words, your counter is to quote yourself verbatim. Don't agree to their paraphrase. When you get that hallway warning, "Hey, I'm just trying to help, but," which is totally designed to deflate your confidence, simply smile, thank them, and confess nothing. If someone says, "We need to be careful about optics," they are shifting the debate to fear-driven politics. Ask them, "Which specific stakeholder are we concerned about?" "There may be a misunderstanding" is reputation laundering used when they drop the ball. Counter with, "Let's align on the original decision." And finally, "I've spoken to a few people." That is anonymous consensus weaponized. But sunlight weakens phantom armies. Demand specific names, which team specifically. Stripping the manipulator of their power requires you to demand specifics.
Which brings us to part 5, specificity and the record. We've decoded the intents of these 18 phrases. Let's see how this all builds into your ultimate defensive toolkit to permanently shift from defense to offense.
If you take away just one thing from this explainer today, let it be this. Corporate manipulation completely collapses under the weight of precise, evidence-based questioning and a refusal to react emotionally. In corporate life, ambiguity is the manipulator's weapon. But specificity, forcing details, anchoring to data, establishing concrete timelines, that is the leader's armor. Relying on these golden rules guarantees you maintain an accurate paper trail that absolutely protects your professional standing. Document those meeting recaps yourself, immediately. Force measurable specifics when you meet vague resistance. Never ever apologize for manufactured errors or gaslighting, and always keep the room outcome focused. If you follow these rules, you strip away the shadows where manipulation thrives. So,
The crucial question I'll leave you with is this. Are you reacting to their polite-sounding words, or are you managing their hidden intent? Stop letting vocabulary be used as a weapon against you. Start stepping into every meeting ready to command clarity, protect your ideas, and safeguard your authority. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, I challenge you to listen very closely in your next meeting.